أهلا وسهلا بالجميع وشكرا لانضمامكم إلينا اليوم في هذه الندوة الإلكترونية تحت عنوان إنجازات التمويل المسؤول في العالم العربي والأدوات المتوفرة والقواعد التنظيمية العالمية. أهلا بكم. في البداية وبالأمور اللوجستية نطلب منكم لطرح الأسئلة أثناء الندوة. يرجى استخدام خانة الدردشة أو التشات على الجانب الأيمن من نافذة زوم لديكم، وللتأكد من رؤية سؤالكم يرجى تحديد الجميع أو everyone من القائمة المنسدلة أمامكم، ويرجى إبقاء كاميرا الويب لديكم مغلقة لضمان خصوصيتكم وتجنب أي مشاكل في النطاق الترددي. وستظل ميكروفونات الحاضرين مكتومة الصوت أثناء جلسة الويبينار بأكملها. وأخيراً سيتم إرسال تسجيل هذه الندوة إلى جميع الحاضرين والمسجلين عبر البريد الإلكتروني. وننتقل إلى مديرة الحوار اليوم سحر الطيبي، مستشارة بوابة الشمول المالي للتنمية. إليك سحر.
شكراً أدي، وأهلا وسهلا بجميع المشاركين في ندوة اليوم تحت عنوان إنجازات التمويل المسؤول في العالم العربي، وفي ظل التطورات في السنوات الأخيرة في المنطقة، وخاصة بالنسبة للتمويل الرقمي والتحول والتشريعات المنظمة للتمويل الأصغر. تستضيف بوابة الشمول المالي باللغة العربية سلسلة من الندوات الإلكترونية لمناقشة المستجدات في المنطقة. بداية العام استضفنا ندوة سلطت الضوء على التمويل الأخضر والمسؤولية البيئية. اليوم نتشرف بالنيابة عن بوابة الشمول المالي بإدارة النقاش حول التمويل المسؤول وحماية المستهلك باستضافة 4 ممثلين عن 4 مؤسسات. من CGAP السيد إريك دوفلو، قائد عمل CGAP بشأن حماية المستهلك. من Enda Tamweel سيد فتحي شرني مدير العمليات. من FSPs السيدة آن لاور بيغال. ومن جمعية رجال أعمال والمستثمرين لتنمية المجتمع المحلي في الأهلية DBACD السيد محمد نبيل مدير العمليات. نبدأ اليوم بعرض شامل مع إريك يسلط الضوء على آخر التطورات وإعادة
to highlight the latest achievements and to rethink the customer protection and the environment system. Towards the end of the presentations, we will be receiving your questions and addressing questions to our speakers. Go ahead, Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. So my presentation will highlight our new vision at CGAP, as well as our new approach for consumer protection. CGAP has worked on financial consumer protection and responsible finance for over 15 years. And based on our experience, we think we need a new approach. So let's go to slide 3. And I'm going to explain first why we think we need a new approach to consumer protection, in particular in digital finance. Well, we know from Findex that we have seen a fantastic, increase in the number of people who have access to formal financial services. And in particular, we know that this is in a large part due to the digital financial services expansion. So we've also seen in the last few years many improvements in terms of regulatory frameworks in different countries, including in the MENA region. So there's been a lot of progress on that front, and we've also seen several initiatives to make digital finance and financial services more generally more responsible. And we have some example from SPTF that will be described today. But at the same time, there is no strong evidence that the quality of financial services has increased. So we see increase in access, we see increase in usage, but we also see a lot of issues in terms of consumer adoption, in terms of trust from customers, in terms of their ability to use their financial services. And we also see from our global research that was published about a year ago that we have growing number of risks and the growing scale of digital finance consumer risks. At the same time, we have all these new providers that are entering the market, fintech startups, platforms, digital credit apps, and we see a lot of new providers in the ecosystem that all bring new opportunities and new risks. So there is no doubt that digital finance and technology is bringing tons of opportunities, but what we want here in this presentation is to also highlight that there is also a need for more responsible finance and consumer protection with this evolution. And in particular, one aspect is that the regulators, new regulators have emerged, like for example, data protection regulators, but there's often a lack of effective regulation and supervision of all the new providers. So these are some of the main reasons why we need a new approach, and then I'm going to go pretty quickly on what we mean. But first, before I describe the new approach, I just want to show a couple of slides on the emerging risks. And if we go to slide 4, we can see that we have developed, next slide, please, we have developed in our research a category of different risks that we see globally. So this is just, to try to organize our, our findings. And we have 4 broad categories: fraud, data misuse, lack of transparency, inadequate redress mechanisms, and also what we call cross-cutting type of risks, which are agent-related risks. Your mom and pop shop, that delivers financial services in the countryside, for example, that comes sometimes with risks, and network downtime that can bring a whole range of different risks. So next slide shows that in the global research, so please go to the next slide, we see an increase in scale for most digital finance risks on the slide number 5. If you can move to the next slide, please. I'm not seeing slide 5 on the, oh, here we go, yes. So on this slide, I'm showing that our research found growing risk. The red arrows on slide number 5 shows that we are seeing globally we have some data that shows that there is increase in all these kinds of risks in all different regions globally, regionally, at the country level. We have gathered evidence. When there is NA, it means that we have not found reliable evidence on the increase of risks. But as you can see, the overall picture is quite, red, which is not a good sign. That means we're seeing increase in digital finance risks quite overwhelmingly, in particular for frauds and data misuse. So let's move to slide 6. This is just an example showing that, mobile app. Please go to slide number. Oh, next slide. Sorry, I think we have different slide numbers. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So mobile apps frauds are rising very fast. We have several research that show this. For example, the share of fraudulent transaction via mobile apps have increased by 104% between 2016 and 2020, whereas the share of transaction via mobile apps have increased by 34%. So the bottom line is that the consumer risks are growing faster than the consumer adoption of financial technology solution. Next slide, please. So same for the data breach. Next slide, please. The increase in data breach incidents. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the increase in data breach incidents is going faster than the data created. That's what I wanted to show. That's related to the misuse of data and frauds. We're seeing that data. Sometimes people call it it's the new petrol or gold, but it's also bringing some risks with the misuse of data and the frauds using people's data. So this is going quite fast. And if we go to the next slide, I would like to highlight. So if we go to the next slide, thank you. I would like to highlight that women could be more exposed to digital financial service risks due to their low digital financial literacy. And this, you will receive the slide, so I'm going quite fast on the data, but it's very interesting data showing basically that women in most countries have less abilities to text and have less advanced financial knowledge than men, which obviously expose them to much more risks than men. So if we go to the next slide, a definition of what is our new vision at CGAP, because based on all what I've said before, we are developing a new vision and a new approach, which we think will be more ambitious and more impactful. So we call it a responsible digital finance ecosystem, and it takes a holistic approach to protect customers. And it means that all the key actors in the digital finance ecosystem, that means consumers, providers of financial services that have some digital elements in their provision of services, policymakers, regulators, supervisors, market facilitators, they all interact in a way that protects and ensure positive outcomes for customers, especially women and vulnerable consumers. So it sounds very nice and very optimistic, but what do we mean? How do we put this in place? So if we can go to the next slide, this is showing the three elements that we think are critical on the next slide. You see all the different actors in the ecosystem and the three elements that are absolutely critical for this ecosystem to be more responsible. So I'll just, go quickly on each of them. Customer centricity on the next slide is an important piece for a responsible ecosystem. That means that providers, policymakers, next slide please, and funders all take a more customer-centric approach. And that means, for example, that providers adopt business models that really value the realities and the needs of the customers. If we can go to the next slide, please. Then what we mean by the capability, the second C, next slide, please. The key actors have the capability to contribute to a responsible ecosystem. So that's slide 2 out of 3. We mean there that we need to build the financial literacy of consumers, but also the capacity of providers. SPTF will talk about it, but also the capacity of policymakers in terms of regulating consumer protection and supervising, as well as market monitoring. And on the next slide, which will be my last slide, the collaboration, the third C, is something that we see absolutely critical to make the ecosystem more responsible. And it means collaboration among different regulators, for example, like data protection authorities, as well as financial consumer protection authorities, financial authorities, consumer protection authorities, telecom authorities, etc. But it also means collaborations among consumer associations and regulators, among providers and regulators, etc. So there are some illustrations on the slides that you will receive. And just to conclude on my last slide, I would say that a responsible ecosystem is also something that we need to measure. So there are different ways to measure success in making the ecosystem more responsible. And for example, measuring consumer risks with national surveys, measuring financial health, and measuring what's happening to customers, what we call customer outcomes. So we're going to implement this vision, and we've already started to do it in West Africa, and we'll continue to do this to learn lessons on what it takes to make this ecosystem more responsible and share the lessons with you. Thank you very much.
شكرا إريك على العرض الشامل.
Thank you, Eric, for this very interesting and comprehensive presentation on the latest developments. Thank you for highlighting the importance of the customer protection through responsible financing. From Tunisia, from Enda Tamweel, we have Mr. Fathi Shermi, the operations director. Enda is pioneer in acquiring the smart certification. Fathi, would like to hear from you on the latest developments, the challenges, and the future projects of Enda Tamweel. Go ahead, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting me. I'd like to welcome you all of the participants. And in this presentation, we can see that Enda acquired twice the smart label. But of course, that was not an easy process. I would like to be very practical in my talk. What my colleague just presented gives a very challenging request to the microfinance organizations. And at a certain period of time, most of the microfinance institutions had been seen as if monopolizing the market and controlling everything. However, with the progress we witnessed, we started being more sensitized to the importance of protecting the client and the customer. At Enda, that had been clear to the public board of directors. So the board of directors must always be convinced and must acknowledge the fact that protecting the customer is a priority in the financing operations. So it shouldn't only be about providing loans and financial services. I'm really pleased to have with us Anlor, who was once one of the people who worked with us in order for us to obtain this label, the client protection certification. And we do not only protect clients through pricing, through reduced prices and transparency, but we also would like to protect clients from risks in the microfinance field. So after we acquired the AML certification on the anti-money laundering and terrorism financing, we know that it's important to protect customers and clients from this pandemic. We also provide services. And here I would like to bring your attention to the fact that there should be a follow-up and a continuity. You might obtain the certification once. For instance, we have acquired the best client service in 2020, but we did ensure sustainability. We have learned a lot. We've used the lessons learned in order to keep the certification, and that was possible in 3 years at a row. So consecutively in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So you can see that our objective is always to maintain the achievement and to improve. In addition, the micro rate is a big achievement. So the micro rate assesses the social performance of institutions through KPIs, key performance indicators. And we ranked first A-, which is considered very advanced in this field. Now, how did we get to this point? How did we achieve all of that? Let's move on to the following slide, please. Here are the global social performance management standards. So the first thing we've done is the establishment of a committee at the board of directors concerned with the, we call it the SPM committee. So it is in charge of the performance management and the social objectives, as mentioned by our colleague. We're concerned with women, the youth, the rural women. So they're all covered through this committee. We do have also other objectives. I mean, we're not limited to slogans and headlines, but we have a constant follow-up on the implementation of the objectives on a monthly and quarterly basis. The chairman and the members of the board, the regional directors are all assessed accordingly. Most importantly, let me focus on the pricing. Every year, on a yearly basis, or every 1.5 years, we reduce the pricing. How do we do that? We have good performance appraisal, and that's because we don't want to have the clients impacted by non-competent staff members. And this is very important. We revisit the entire process. We try to see what can be improved in order not to have the client bear the brunt of the non-competency. In order for the employee to best serve the client, he or she should be dealt with in a responsible manner. I mean by that, all the working conditions should be provided, improved working conditions. The dissemination of the culture of client protection through trainings and oversight. Maybe when answering your questions, I'll get the chance to give you more details. And our proximity to the client enabled us to design and develop products that meet the needs and the requirements, the cash flows and the monetary flows of the client and customers. We have developed farming and non-farming products, green financing businesses, products, and startup products. And that was done through different distribution channels. I mean, the client can have access to the service through the bank note. The client can come physically to our branch office or can have the financing deposited to the bank account, if any, or through the post. I mean, products and services are accessible, and this way we are much more closer to the clients and customers. We also abide by the law, because you know that we have the Microfinance Supervisory Authority, which had established client protection, data protection regulations. The pricing should be clear on the contract at the branch, etc. So there is applied oversight over the transparency provided to the clients. Another thing that was created, and that's very important, is the free contact hotline in order to follow up on complaints by the clients and customers. We have a system to address all complaints and grievances by clients and customers with a certain period of time to file complaints and get them addressed. Enda Tamweel works together with Enda NGO, which is specialized in providing trainings to the clients and customers on financial education and non-financial services, which largely pertain to the customer protection. That is what we were able to achieve. I know that a lot of efforts were put into this, but there are also major challenges, and we still have much to do, especially as mentioned by the former speaker, when it comes to the digitization, the digital services. Here we find a lot of challenges when it comes to the customer protection. We are happy with what we've achieved, but we know that a lot of challenges are awaiting us, and hopefully together with the other speakers in the market in Tunisia, we hopefully would work together in order to protect our customers and clients, because at the end of the day, we know that the clients constitute a vulnerable group. I mean, it really deserves full respect and support. We have to be really doing our best in order to protect clients socially, financially, and even culturally. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fathi. Thank you.
Enda Tamweel وإندا NGO برضه بيكملوا بعض
Thank you, Fathi. Indeed, Enda Tamweel and its NGO continue to work together to provide financial and non-financial services. And indeed, we will be dedicating some time at the end of our session to allow our participants to ask questions. We welcome Anne Laur from Cerise SPTF. She will give us a quick overview on the latest developments on client protection, as well as the strides that we aspire to make in the future, in the region, and the Arab world in general. You have the floor, Anne.
Yes, thank you. Hello to all. I am the CP's Client Protection Pathway Manager at Cerise and SPTF. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we do in general and what we have done. We have succeeded in the region. So Cerise and SPTF are two different associations that have joined forces because they have a joint purpose. Our key stakeholders, let's say, that work around us and for whom we work are financial service providers, first and foremost. Together with them, we will have their clients, and we also work with regulators because, as we've heard, having an ecosystem that works is critical to advancing this industry. So what we do is promote best practices, and we have over 10 years of experience in that. We also facilitate knowledge sharing through our website, different webinars, trainings, resources. We gather best practices to put them in our resource center, and we coordinate stakeholders, most of those that are here stated on this picture. So the idea here is to support the creation of an ecosystem, as and I'm reusing Eric's words, to drive consensus and improvement on responsible finance, which goes through social and environmental performance. Let's move to the next slide. How do we define responsible inclusive finance? Next slide, please. So responsible inclusive finance, according to our way of drawing our standards, is first about protecting clients from harm in the financial inclusion world. Then we will also want to go a step ahead and create real value for customers, internally care for employees, and this is one of the new dimension that has become key to the social environmental performance: respect and maintain natural resources. So as a whole, what we are helping and supporting is an industry that goes towards a triple bottom line objective. Next slide, please. So once we've defined how we envision responsible inclusive finance, as a client protection pathway manager, I will take a deeper look into the client protection side of things. There is the social environmental performance on the right-hand side of the slides that provides an effective translation of your institution strategy into practice for social mission and environmental mission. There is on the left-hand side, the client protection side of responsible finance, inclusive finance, which is it's the first step, preventing any harm to clients, so that your clients, as we heard Enda say, clients are at the center of your business model, of your operations, of your strategy. Through this definition, we have built a social and environmental performance management, measurement standards and tools, which represent the implementation of management practices, which will put into practices the social and this is wrongly, sorry, a typo, the social strategy and the environmental strategy. And then later comes the outcomes, where we also have working groups and are doing some work with partners, but this is not the topic of today's webinar. Next slide, please. So at Cerise and SPTF, we, throughout a long consultation with stakeholders being financial service providers, clients, experts, rating agencies, and other networks and associations who work in this industry, we have come up with 7 dimensions of the universal standards which include today, compared to what we've seen on the Enda slides, include today the 7th dimension of environmental performance management, which is fully integrated now in our universal standards. These standards include 8 client protection standards, which are about having appropriate product design and delivery, preventing over-indebtedness, having full transparency with your clients, encompassing complete responsible pricing into your strategy, obviously having fair and respectful treatment of clients, keeping your clients' data safe and private, having something efficient in terms of complaints resolution. And since last February, when we published our new universal standards, we now have a new 8th client protection standards, which is around the governance and the HR systems that should be committed to client protection. And I heard earlier Fethi, who was saying how they implemented at the board level a committee, a social performance committee that in fact was created at the moment of the client protection certification preparation. And this standard is exactly about this. You can't have a fully client-centric business if your board isn't there and committed, and requires all the internal management systems to be committed and operationalized and actionable for your clients. So this is one of the new updates that I'm happy to be giving today. It's not 7 CPPs anymore, and we will talk about the other advancements since Smart Campaign. We have number 8, and how the board and the shareholders need to be fully aligned with client protection in order to achieve responsible inclusive finance. Next slide, please. So we've developed, since the wind down of Smart Campaign, a way for financial service providers to help them, to support them in their pathway towards excellent client protection. This client protection pathway, which is an initiative developed by Cerise and SPTF, describes the steps that a financial service provider can take to improve its client protection practices and communicate to its investors. This pathway will provide you with a roadmap for implementing client protection standards and help you stay on track. The first step is about committing to implement. So it's one step further from the endorsement that Smart Campaign had, because not only we are asking financial service providers to commit to client protection, but we also ask them to start walking on this pathway, assessing their practices, identifying their gaps, and creating an action plan that brings you to step 2. Step 2 is about improving your client protection standards and practices. So once you've done this commitment and you've started working on looking at your gaps, where should I work on first? What are my priorities so I protect my clients from harm? Then you start implementing your action plan, improving your practices. And on this step, we also have tons of resources, tools to measure, tools to identify your gaps. And I will let you have a look at the end. We have plenty of links to our website where you can have essential resources to help in this improvement phase. And then the third step, which is about demonstrating progress, achievement, is mainly around the certification. So we earlier had Enda, who told us about the certification process, which was under the Smart Campaign methodology. Today, we kept certification as a standalone product. You can still go for certification, and it is not a pass or fail exercise anymore as it was earlier. We have 3 levels to recognize your achievement. You can reach a bronze level, which is not the full framework of client protection indicators. We have also the silver and the gold level, gold being very equivalent to the previous Smart Campaign certification. So these 3 steps that you can take for client protection are, those steps are at your own pace, at your own rhythm, and will support you in protecting your clients from harm and taking the first step into social and environmental performance and towards responsible inclusive finance. We can go to the next slide, please. So key, for those who knew the Smart Campaign client protection principles, the key changes that I've already mentioned is that client protection is part of the universal standards, but remains a standalone product. We now have, with the commitment to implement, a list of identified committed providers, and now with those 3 steps, and additionally, the 3 levels of certification, you can demonstrate your progress and not just a pass or fail exercise. So it's more than a simple endorsement. We ask you to actually implement at your own pace and whatever you feel is your priority, but you need to move forward. Then we have these 3 levels of recognition, as I said, about certification. And now certification, for those who are interested, is valid for 3 years. It was previously 4, and it's 3 today with no what we call surveillance audits. We can move to next slide. I invite all of the financial service providers to join this CP pathway through our website. You will see it's a very easy and simple process where you fill in a form, it's free, and you will have everything that is written on the slide. And I'm moving forward quickly because I'm running out of time, but you will receive this presentation as well. We can move to next slide, please. For those who are interested as funders, as regulators, as investors in this audience, you will find on our website as well this list of committed providers where you will easily identify those who are committed, and you will find out how we support these financial service providers to move along the pathway through tools and through different resources and webinars, etc. We can move to next slide, which I quickly wanted to give an overview of what the work we're doing in the region, which completely coincides with what Eric earlier told us about a healthy ecosystem in our industry. About, I remember the 3 C's that we applied. Collaboration, we collaborated with the regulators in Egypt, and this was a specific Egyptian project to advance responsible finance in the country. Collaborated with regulators, with the Microfinance Association and financial service providers to provide them support and training and coaching, advancing their client protection principles and practices. So that's a very quick overview. We are absolutely open to continue working with the regulators with the financial service providers, and eventually with the clients in order to promote responsible finance in the MENA region. And this, I will leave you to read the fact that we are also working on standards for digital financial providers, digital finance service providers, that will be pilot tested very soon, and that will be published next year. Thank you, and sorry for taking too much time.
شكرا آن وشكرا على كل التوضيحات والمستجدات.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for this quick overview. Thank you for your quick overview on client protection and the standards that have been developed in the past few years. Thank you for this information. Indeed, they will be conveyed to all of, or they will be handed over to all of our participants. And we will now give the floor to the operations director in the Businessmen Association, or from the Businessmen Association for Community and Development, who will share with us his association's experience, namely in responsible financing. You have the floor, Mohammed, and you have 10 minutes. Thank you so much, Sahar. Thank you to all of the participants. We welcome you. We will be giving an overview on what happens in Egypt. My colleagues have discussed the practices, and I think that those who work in responsible financing use the same approach. So I will not be diving into the practices that my colleagues have previously mentioned. However, I wish to skim through a few concepts. Of course, we will be defining together responsible financing. Responsible financing is a mutual relationship between the client and financing institutions to ensure sustainability. This relationship needs to come into effect and lead to an impact, and this impact must be sustainable. This will indeed lead to the longevity of an institution and will lead to a better social impact for clients. And this indeed will be achieved through regulations and legislations that clearly regulate the market in a manner that ensures that we all implement these principles and concepts, meaning the concepts and standards of client protection. This is to ensure that we all apply these practices in reality. Moving on to the next slide. We at DBACD have conducted an analysis for the past 3 years from 2019 to 2022, and we looked at our numbers, and most practitioners or most experts in the industry or in the sector have been amazed at the numbers. There has been an increase in the sector, and despite the fact that we have faced the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the economic crisis that has hit this sector and that has hit the beneficiaries in the sector especially. And we have looked at the growth rates between or from 2019 to 2022, and there has been a growth of 21%. This is when it comes to the beneficiaries. As for the funding, it has grown at a rate of 99.5%. And in the slide in front of you, you can take a look at these numbers. And the law that was enacted in Egypt has allowed companies to enter this market, and there is now dedicated microfinance institutions in our sector, and we have noticed that the growth rate for such institutions has reached 36%. It is in fact considered a significant percentage or a significant rate. And this showed that the number of companies in the sector is growing and that this has served the market and that they have constituted an important stakeholder on the market. This has been a driver for the market or for the industry. For us as a Businessmen Association for Community and Development, from 2019 to 2022, we have registered high growth rates, estimated at about 8%. And achieving such a level of growth in this period of time is very positive, despite the fact that we have decreased interest rates. We have, in fact, reached the lowest interest rate on the market. At that time, it was estimated at about 15%. And we were, in fact, applying far in, or we have applied inferior rates, and these rates were lower than those applied by other institutions. And the reason behind this is that we wanted to ensure that we do not use adverse practices, and we wanted to make sure that we prevent over-indebtedness, because there was, of course, a lot of activities ongoing and there were higher or high activity rates registered, despite the fact that many of these activities did not allow for clients to ensure debt payoff. Such activities are considered adverse because they do not allow for high profitability for the consumers and they do not allow them to pay off their debts. This is why the growth was not as high as we would have wanted to, but we have registered this important growth rate despite the fact that we have decreased our interest rates. And this was, I think, attributed to illiteracy, financial illiteracy among some customers, or illiteracy among some institutions who did not or that did not want to apply the principles of responsible financing. Moving on to the next slide. I stressed the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact. In fact, regulators in Egypt have worked thoroughly before and during the pandemic to try as much as possible to treat or to ensure client protection by enacting a number of regulations. And these regulations pertain to the prevention of adverse practices, to ensure that, of course, all of the institutions ensure client protection. And the central bank has, in fact, worked in cooperation with our regulator in 2022 to ensure that or in 2020 to ensure that these institutions or that institutions working in sectors are all certified or obtain certifications for client protection. And a decision was made for accelerated debt payoff. And this has been taken into account. Regulators have indeed an important part or an important role to play. And at the end of the day, thanks to these regulators, we have managed to establish a framework. And this framework would include, or this framework includes standards that apply to all institutions to ensure that clients are protected first and foremost, and to ensure effective, fair, and just competitiveness with clear mechanisms for monitoring to ensure that these institutions are abiding by these standards and are resolving phases. Of course, as said, I will not dive into what my colleague Fathi has previously said, namely applications in institutions or responsible financing implementations in institutions. We have in fact committed to responsible pricing. We have also committed to client protection, and we have been granted the Smart Campaign certification 2 years ago. And we were also granted the gold certificate, which means that we have been recertified. We also work on evaluating or on measuring the social impact periodically, and we believe that this allows us to better ensure better effectiveness. And our association has also works on ensuring that our vision and our mission is implemented effectively. And the board of directors also make sure that this is implemented. And we continue to work on providing not only financial services, but also non-financial services through our partnerships with various stakeholders. And I think that the most important concept pertaining to financial to responsible financing is client centrality and ensuring that low income or vulnerable individuals are well served. As you can tell, this is a number of certificates or awards that we have been granted, and I think that this is rather the impact of the implementation, or this came as a result of the implementation of responsible financing. And I think that this is a quick overview of the awards, not all of the awards that we have been granted. And I think that I highlighted the awards and the certifications that are directly related to responsible pricing, responsible financing, and social and environmental impact. And I think that in the current week, in the past week, we've managed to, or I think I've already mentioned that, but we have been granted the gold certification in client protection. And we have also been rated. We have been granted the A- rating. And of course, without diving into the details, into the mechanisms and into these processes, I believe that this is a rating that includes all of our or the entire institution, namely, or the entire process from design or planning until service provision. Moving on to the next slide. Challenges to the implementation of responsible financing, financial illiteracy or insufficient financial literacy. Of course, I think that institutions need to have their awareness raised on responsible financing as well. And I think that institutions almost always focus on profitability that outweighs financial or responsible financing. I think that regulators must ensure that they have a moral code so that all of the practitioners abide by the specific code, so that at the end of the day, transparency practices are ensured and so that data is protected.
تطبيق او العوائد من تطبيق التمويل المسؤول، احنا عايزين نصل الى الشمول المالي، فاحنا بنعزز الوصول الى الشمول المالي بشكل بيطور وبينمي من السوق. لابد ان احنا لو الثقافه الماليه بتاعت العملاء واضحه، هيبقى الوصول لتمويل مسؤول هيبقى سهل. لازم ان العملاء يكون عندهم قدرة على ان هو يدرس كل الخيارات الممنوحة قدامه ويختار الانسب بالنسبة له منها ان يكون البيئه التنافسيه فيها نوع من انواع العداله وفيها
The competitive environment should ensure fairness and effective measures with an active assessment of the applied measures and procedures. The financing should meet the essential needs of the customer and avoid indebtedness. There must be benefits shared by the institutions and their customers. With such a responsible financing, it is possible for the institutions to face and address crises, because during the COVID-19, a lot of institutions and businesses
بعض الممارسات الخاطئه نوصل لتجارب احنا كلنا شفناها ودرسناها. فلازم الدور ده يبقى احنا عندنا مسؤوليه، المسؤوليه دي تخصنا كلنا كممارسين، بعيدا حتى عن يعني احنا عايزين نحافظ على السوق وعلى الصناعه. فلا بد
the market and the business. We need transparent and fair practices. We need to be respecting the client, and we need to maintain the rights of the clients. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be sharing this with you. Thank you.
محمد وشكرا لجميع
Thank you, Mohammed. I'd like to thank all of the speakers. Several questions have been asked. We can present them real quick. Unfortunately, Eric had to leave because he has other commitments. There is a general question about the terminology, the different terms being used. The responsible financing, inclusive finance, sustainable finance and funding. So I know that this is all within one umbrella, and we're trying to achieve harmony. But I would like to ask a specific question on how to ensure integration between the standards and the requirements, international requirements. Can you please, in less than 1 minute, and let us know how we can work on all of these components in the microfinance institutions? Anne?
Yes, thank you for the question. So to clarify, we would like to understand how the universal standards can connect to international standards. So when we created those, we absolutely took into account everything that was already existing. What we found is that IFC, for instance, IFC performance standards, SDGs, etc., were there, but were not measurable and were not as actionable as what we provide. So what we did is take all these standards, these principles that existed, and created indicators that allow financial service providers to implement. The idea for us is to actually work and implement in your management systems how to have them in your operations. So if you have a look, and I answered to a very interesting question on ESG, our tools have been created based on these global principles, and then going downwards to our standards that are actionable indicators. Thank you.
Okay. شكرا آن. بتخيل إنه في
Thank you, Anne. I believe that, as mentioned by Anne, it is possible now to measure progress when it comes to responsible financing. And it's a journey, actually. It's a process. It is not about being successful or not, but most importantly, all institutions, the board of directors and the staff members should become aware of the significance and the importance of responsible financing. It is clear that, yes, this year, all different stakeholders and parties focus on the responsible financing, the sustainable financing, which is environmentally sustained, and the awareness raising and education at the level of the less knowledgeable groups with a focus on women. Again, I'd like to thank all of the speakers, all participants for joining us at this webinar, and I hope that you will be joining the next month's webinar on responsible financing with a focus on women's support in the post-digitization era and the post-COVID-19, etc. Again, thank you, Eric and Mohammed and Fathi, for sharing your expertise, and thanks to Eddie for the follow-up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sahar. Thank you all. What next? First, in 1 minute, give us your feedback by using the questionnaire shared with you, and we will be sending you recordings and all available material through the portal. For further information about financial inclusiveness, please visit FinDevGateway.org AR or CPAG. Thank you very much and see you next time.